Okay, so we just saw a video on using workspaces to segment our environments. Here's what I sort of don't like about them. The first thing is that Terraform Cloud here is something you might end up using as a place to run Terraform apply and plans and all that good stuff, because that's the point of Terraform Cloud. It'll do that stuff for you. You give it a GitHub repository, provide it some environment variables, and it will run everything for you up in the cloud, in their cloud. Now, they have a concept of workspaces in Terraform Cloud as well, which are actually a little bit different. They are different than the local workspaces. So that's a little bit confusing. The other thing I'm a little bit iffy on with workspaces here is that you don't really know what workspace you're on easily. So it's easier to have some human error there. So we have the Terraform workspace show command again, but it's not really in your face. It's kind of easy to miss what workspace you're in. And the last thing, the reason why I tend to avoid this is because I've actually had issues where when upgrading to newer versions of Terraform and I was not in the default workspace, my state actually got lost. And I happened to not use a versioned S3 bucket in that case, so I lost that state. I had to figure out how to delete everything and start fresh, which is really a big pain. Now remember how I emphasized in a previous video how important it was to have bucket versioning on in your S3 bucket. It's from hard experience from that use case. Combined with workspaces and updating to a major new version of Terraform, something happened, I don't even know what still, and I lost all of my state. So in this video, we're going to see a slightly different way to do this. It's a little bit more manual. I kind of like it a little better, and it's one that you might see a bunch of other people use too. This isn't just me making it up off the top of my head. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. There's going to be a new directory structure here. So in here, I'll make a new directory. So make dir, and one is going to be called production. One is going to be called staging. And of course, you can see the pattern here. We'll make a new directory per environment. Inside of each item here, we're going to copy cloudcasts and variables into them. Copy that into production and then staging. We can delete them from here. Okay, so let's close this. Let's go ahead and see what changes we're going to make for these files. The variables files, we already have these commented out. So we're going to leave those commented out because we don't need to say, hey, we're in the staging directory. Let's make this a staging environment because that's pretty redundant. But if you have other variables you want to add to this file here, you can go ahead and do that. Inside of the Cloudcast file per environment, we're going to go ahead and get rid of local. We're not going to use Terraform Workspace. And we can bring back our infrastructure environment variable that we defined before. In here, I'm in the production directory of the Cloudcast file, so I'm going to default to production for infrastructure environment. And in the staging environment, we'll bring that back as well, get rid of locals. And we'll say the staging one, of course, has a default of staging for the environment. Now, one more important change up here is our backend here. So our backend here has some configuration and it's hard coded. So here at Cloudcast Terraform TF state, we really do not want the same key per environment. So we could probably go ahead and do something like staging here. And in production, we could change that to production. But instead, I'm going to go ahead and do something different here. We're actually going to comment these out and delete them essentially, but I'll comment them out here so I have them for reference. And let's go back to our original here for these. And I'm also going to get rid of the DynamoDB table locking in our case here, because we probably need a DynamoDB table per environment in our case. I'm just not going to show that right for now. But we did get rid of bucket and key, and we're not going to define those here. And that is because we can actually define some backend stuff when we call Terraform. So it's a little more dynamic. So the Terraform command can accept a backend flag, and we'll see that in a bit. Okay, another change here is that we changed the directory structure a little bit. So our modules are now up a level. So we can add a dot here to go up a level and then into the modules directory, because the modules directory is not any longer in the same directory as our production and staging files. And here, of course, I forgot to change this. This local infrastructure env will once again become var infra env. We'll replace all for that. And EC2 app, EC2 worker, and VPC will change the directory structure there to reflect reality. Okay, let's close these. We're going to make some new files here. One is going to be backend production.tf, and another is going to be backend staging.tf. This is how I've decided to add some backend configuration per environment, but what you do is going to be totally up to you. Now, let's go ahead and just check out production, Cloudcast, scroll back up to here, and bucket and key are the two things we need for our backend state now. So we're going to copy those in to each item here, and we'll copy that here. Okay, so backend production, backend staging. Now I'm going to use the same bucket for each, but one advantage of using separate files for the backend configuration is that you can separate these and use whatever configuration you want. I'm going to keep the same bucket, but you might want to use different buckets per environment. Totally up to you. In my case, I'm only changing the key. So I'm in backend production. This will be the Terraform production.tf state file. And this one will be the Terraform staging TF state file. You might even want to do a different directory, right? So we could say Cloudcast production Terraform TF state. And I think I actually like that a little better. Here it's going to be Cloudcast staging Terraform state. Okay, so I'm going to choose to separate these environment state files in S3 using a directory. So production directory, staging directory here. So I think I have enough changes here to go ahead and test this out. I'm going to use Terraform, and we can't just go ahead and run Terraform plan or anything like that. It's really not going to know what to do. Plus we need to reinitialize everything here because we have a new structure. So Terraform init is what we want to run, but we have some flags to give it. So the first thing I'm going to do is say change directory into our various directories here. So we're going to be managing a state per environment. So production versus staging, right? So we're going to have different state files. So we have to init in each different state. So we're going to init in our production state and init in our staging state. So Terraform change dir, so we can tell it what directory to run out of. We're going to go and run out of our staging directory. We're going to init, and then I'm going to say backend config equals. I don't think we need equals here, but that is going to be this file, backend staging.tf. Now notice it's very not clear here because of my sizing here. So we'll do Terraform change dir is staging. We're going to run the init command, and in a new line, I'm going to say the backend config is up a level, backend staging.tf. Now I'm up a level here because we're changing directory into staging, and therefore relative to that directory, the backend staging TF file is up a level. Now you might want to put backend staging in the staging folder, so it's not like that. Totally up to you. So let's go ahead and init this. Oh, that one wants an equal sign. Okay, so initializing modules and error, unreadable module directory, unable to evaluate, directory symlink, or there does not exist. Okay, so our file paths are wrong somewhere. And the answer to that is simple. I changed the production environment, but I didn't change this one. So let's change local infrastructure environment, and we can replace this with one that has 2 dots wherever that occurs. And then we can try to re-init this stuff. And it looks like it's working. Okay, great. And then we can run Terraform plan. Now plan is simpler in plan and apply. We still need change dir. And remember, we need to say equals, and relative to our current directory, we're going to plan in the staging environment here. So change dir staging plan. That is planned out, right? So we have 34 to add, 0 to change, 0 to destroy. So I destroyed infrastructure after the last video. So it's going to recreate everything, but it's recreating it in the staging environment, which is nice, right? Environment staging for the tags. Now, let's go ahead and clear this out. We can do another init. And instead of staging, we can say production. So the production stuff is going to get initialized. And then for there, we can say instead of staging production, we can plan that out as well. And of course we can apply, but I'm not going to bother doing that in this video just because it takes time. So this is going to go ahead and do a plan for the production environment. 34 to add, 0 to change, 0 to destroy. Perfect. Okay, let's create a helper script because these commands are a little bit of a pain to type out. So I'm going to make a new file here. I'm going to call it run, just because that's a favorite bash script file name of mine. And that is going to be ugly to type out. And we're in a code editor, so let's actually use the code editor. So new file run.sh. I'll just do sh so PHP Storm here knows what kind of file it is. We're actually going to run it as bash. And I'll go ahead and paste in a helper script here. So user bin and bash, use bash. The environment is going to be our first argument that we give. So it'll be staging, production, etc. And then we get the current directory of our script here. So the run.sh script, this is going to get that current directory, the directory name of the bash source. We're going to cd to that directory. So we're always running relative to the location of this run.sh script. So just a little bit of insurance there. Now, if we have the number of arguments we pass this is greater than 0, then go ahead and run the following. If it's not, it's just going to do nothing and head back to the original location. So if our second argument is init, we run this extra command because the init command needs this and wants us to give it the backend config Otherwise, if it's not in it, it's going to be plan or apply or something like that, in which case just go ahead and change directory into our environment one. So we need a directory that matches staging, production, etc. like we have, and then run the second command, which is going to be something like plan and apply. So this is a little easier. Over here, let's do chmod plus x run. So that's executable, run.sh. And then I'm going to say move run.sh run, because I want to just call it run. And then I'm going to do run here, and it's going to do nothing if I just run it without commands. So I can say run staging init. We already initialized, so I don't need to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and say run staging plan. Okay, and that did a plan. It's going to try to create 34 things as usual. So we have a helper script here that is nice. It's going to give us a little bit of an easier time to run our Terraform commands. But the main point here is that it is much less likely to do some human error type thing because we have to type out the environment in order to run commands here. And even if we did that by hand, we have to change dir into some environment, right? Staging, production, all that good stuff. We have very segmented things visually by directory here, right? So we can see I'm in production or I'm in staging. And then within production and staging, we can do some different things if we want to, right? So I could say like the count of EC2 application servers might be, something large, like 5 for our production environment, and it might be 1 for our staging environment. So you can make changes per environment in a little bit of an easier way using this method. Okay, so we saw 2 different methods of changing your environments, of working with multiple environments within the same Terraform configuration. I'm going to go ahead and move on to some more advanced topics in the next module. And this is going to be a different way to segment out your Terraform configuration, not necessarily by environment, but we'll do that also, but instead by the area of AWS that you were working with, because that might be very useful in larger teams where you might have one team working on network stuff and another team working on compute stuff like EC2 and Lambda and all that good stuff. This is just another way to organize your Terraform configuration files that you might want to think about depending on your team size and if you have different teams working on this stuff.